So Cenk Uygur has been going on Piers Morgan's show and debating various people on the issue of Israel and Palestine. And Piers decided, let me have massive fireworks and burning hatred, because I'm going to invite Rabbi Shmuley and Cenk Uygur to discuss the issue. So this went about as well as you would expect. And it's a wild segment, man. So let's dive into it and we'll break it down.
Calling for a ceasefire. Queen Rania of Jordan, Angelina Jolie, Arab leaders, and so on. I presume you would agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they've murdered enough Palestinian civilians. And even Netanyahu, in an interview with ABC News, said, now that we're on the ground, we're finally pressuring Hamas on hostages. Oh, so the 7,000 bombs you dropped were totally useless and collective punishment and your attempt to murder civilians on purpose as some sort of sick vengeance. So please stop the murders, ceasefire right now.
Now, he's coming in hot there, but he's also right. Like, at this point, if you think if Israel's not killing civilians on purpose, I have a bridge to sell you. When you have the low number given by the UN is a 74% civilian death rate. Euromed Monitor, a different human rights group, has it over 90% civilian death rate. When you've killed nearly 6,000 children and you've destroyed 50% or over 50% of Gaza, when you've bombed, Jesus, I don't even remember the number of hospitals. It's over 100 hospitals. Yeah, it's kind of hard to buy. You're like, bro, just Hamas. They think just saying the word Hamas is a get-out-of-jail-free card for any sort of crimes they want to commit. But Shmuley is not going to hold back.
But Shmuley, your response?
Cenk is polling in the Democratic presidential primaries at 0%, nothing. He has a...
All right, so first of all, I have seen a poll where he's at like 3 or 4%. Was it 2? It was between 2 and 4%. Neither here nor there, right? He just launched his campaign. Also, there's a question as to whether or not he can actually run. There is going to have to be court cases over it because he's not a natural-born citizen. He's a naturalized citizen. But that's neither here nor there. He's not addressing the substance.
The likelihood of being elected the new king of France. And don't interrupt me, please. And the reason is that the American people are decent. They understand that Cenk's antisemitism, which he has voiced on your show repeatedly, calling Jews genocide dares, and this is the eve of Kristallnacht, the 85th anniversary of the start of the Holocaust. He would deny...
Look, you might have criticisms of how Cenk entered the debate here or whatever, but, like, he's just immediately like, anti-Semite. Like, he is doing the caricature of the hardcore far-right Israeli supporter who doesn't want to engage in the substance and just screams that you hate all Jews. I mean, this is embarrassing. This is embarrassing.
Jewish people, the only dignity left to us that we were victims of genocide, and he would say that we are the Nazis, we are the Gestapo, for simply wanting to defend ourselves against the brutality and the savagery of Hamas. Cenk, you'll have your turn. Just show some decency. If you're not going to show it to my people, show it to me and show it to the viewers of the show.
Stop.
But who is
lying.
surprised that a man? Who is surprised that a man the name of whose podcast is Young Turks, who perpetrated the Armenian genocide? The Young Turks is like calling your podcast the Young Nazis, the Young Gestapo. They killed 1.5 to 2 million Armenians between 1915 and 1918.
Literally none of this is on topic. He's just trying to make the argument. Cenk supports genocide of the Jews, and he supports it of the Armenians, and he just loves genocide because he's just a genocidal guy. This is the argument he's trying to make. None of it on the actual topic of the debate or the substance.
The community has begged Cenk to change the name of his show. For the first half of his life, he was a complete Armenian genocide denier. Now he is a Holocaust denier because he is saying that the Jews are engaged in a...
He just said he denies the Holocaust now, too. That Cenk Uygur doesn't believe that the Holocaust happened? He doesn't think it happened? The Holocaust against the Jews? He's just shamelessly making everything up here. Right? This is just all made up. They're totally made up.
Side of the Palestinians. Now, which nation? How can there be 1.8 million Muslim Arab citizens?
Rabbi Shmuley, okay. I'm going to go to Cenk. You said some very strong things about Cenk. You can now respond to Cenk.
Yeah, you should never have this guy on air. Everything he said is a lie. I don't deny the Holocaust. That's insanity. And in terms of the Armenian genocide, there is a powerful analogy there. Why was it a genocide? And yes, it was a genocide. Why? Because they moved and displaced so many people and killed civilians on the way. What is Israel doing? moving and displacing millions of people and killing innocent civilians. It is the exact definition of a genocide. So I think the Jewish people are an amazing people and their culture is beautiful. And I don't tolerate any anti-Semitism. But I think that the occupation is decaying the moral core of Israel. How long are you going to oppress these people?
But Cenk,
and I know this guy, all he wants to do is an ad hominem attack. He's a liar. And you could tell exactly what kind of indecent human being he is. But the main reason he's doing it is to avoid the topic. When are you going to stop murdering Palestinians and cheerleading it?
Okay.
If you're talking about genocide, you're the one right now doing the genocide.
May I respond?
Yes.
Go ahead, more lies. Go ahead.
You know, I've spent my life debating people. Whenever someone starts using personal names and screaming like a lunatic, they're losing the debate. Let me remain factual.
You're the one
First
who
of all,
made up things.
The Palestinians were offered a state in 1936 in the Peel Commission. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 1947, the UN Partition Plan. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 1967 after Israel conquered Judea and Samaria and the West Bank. They rejected it. They were offered a state in 2000, Yasser Arafat, Ehud Barak. They rejected it. They were offered a state with Ehud Olmert, 2008.
Okay,
they rejected it.
this is all incredibly reductive. So first of all, the details in all of those cases matter. Yes, many of them the Palestinians walked away from. The Israelis walked away from a bunch of them too, right? And Netanyahu came in and he was sort of opposed to the peace process that was going on before him. The details of that are complex. It's complicated. Go watch the PBS Frontline documentary on it. I think they do a phenomenal job really showing how close at certain points we were to actually getting peace and actually having a two-state solution. But what he's not mentioning, of course, is there were literally hundreds of peace proposals through the UN blocked by Israel. So even if you want to take his reductive view that the Palestinians are to blame for all of the peace deals that fell apart when they were negotiating one-on-one, even if you want to accept that reductive claim, for argument's sake, let's accept it. What about the hundreds of peace proposals that happened at the UN where Israel opposed all of them? All of them. Got nothing to say about that, does he? No, he's trying to do the reductive, like, oh, we're so pure good in every single way. Gosh golly, Israel's never done anything wrong, Papa. And the are all savage Hamas terrorist murderers.
Israel unilaterally withdrew from Gaza in 2005.
Oh, this is such, I hate it when people make this claim because, like, any sort of further investigation or curiosity where you look deeper into it, it shows right away. It's the dumbest. Like, you'll hear this all the time from Israeli supporters, far-right Israeli supporters, usually. Sometimes even some, like, liberal Zionists will make this claim that, bro, we stopped the occupation in 2005 in Gaza. We stopped the occupation, and what happened? We stopped the occupation, and Hamas came to power, and so it's all on them, bro. They, quote-unquote, stopped the occupation, yet they still control all of the borders except one which Egypt controls. They still keep them basically on military lockdown. They have no rights. They can cut off the electricity, the food, the fuel, the water like this on a whim instantly. That's why people call it an open-air prison. So look, if you want to be very technical about it and say, hey, they stopped the occupation, but then it moved to being a full blockade, okay, we can be very technical and say that. But colloquially describing it as a continued occupation is not at all incorrect. And it's so dishonest. He's using all the Hasbara talking points. It's pathetic.
Not create a state. In fact, where were you, Cenk, when you say that you care about Palestinian children? When Hamas stole the highest rate of per capita international foreign aid, larger than the Marshall Plan, from Palestinian children, did not build schools for them, did not build hospitals, took all the money to buy bombs and to build a network of tunnels, which is... He thinks
this is a massive gotcha, but Cenk has been viciously critical of Hamas every step of the way. So there's what about Hamas being bad? Okay, like, agreed. Next. It's just so dumb.
Than the New York subway system. Where were you then? Why did you only come up now? In fact, when Bashar al-Assad killed 600,000 children, Arab children, when he gassed them with mustard gas, my organization took out full-page New York Times ads to protect them from sarin gas. Where were you then? You don't care about
the reason he goes after Bashar Assad is because that's an enemy of the Israeli government, and they would like a more friendly regime in Syria. And also, if you believe like the biblical notions, Israel proper includes parts of Syria. So that's his interest in Syria. It's not, I am principally opposed to the death and destruction that Assad is bringing on, Syrian civilians. He doesn't care about that at all. Oh, God, this guy is such a fraud.
You are a Jew hater, defined as someone who...
Come on, man. He was just saying, if you have to resort to ad hominem attacks, you're losing the debate. And he's like, Jew hater, Jew hater.
Only wants to lie and say that the Jews are genocidaires. And don't try to cancel me and say that I shouldn't be on. You're not a producer of this show.
This is my first area of disagreement with Cenk a little bit. I don't think the way to counter his insanity is to start screaming bigot and racist at him. Because Cenk has the tools to deconstruct everything he said there. Now, it'll probably be hard to get it all out without this asshole interrupting you. But I think going right to just screaming bigot and racist, people are now going to look at this and be like, well, they're both being immature and childish.
Are ignorant of the facts and ignorant of the history does not mean that you can cancel my voice.
Cenk, your response.
Okay, so first of all, this guy is a full-blown bigot. He's one of the most racist people I have ever seen, does not value Palestinian lives at all. And everything he said about me is 100% untrue. I was vicious in my criticism of Bashar al-Assad. I've criticized Hamas over and over again, and I think what they did...
On the Assad point, he's actually right that he was one of the voices on the Young Turks that was he was just very anti-Bashar Assad, when I actually thought overall it was much more complicated because the leading... rebels that were fighting Assad as the war went on, it became Al-Nusra Front was the name of one of the groups, and others that were just outwardly jihadist groups. So it became like, you could say early on in the war, perhaps there were quote-unquote moderate rebels made up of regular Syrians who just wanted a democratic government, whereas Bashar al-Assad was a dictator. That's fair to claim early on, but then when U.S. funds and weapons started going in there, we propped up the worst possible insurgent jihadist groups. And then it became the Syrian government versus like jihadists. And at that point, I thought, okay, well, it's too reductive to just say like Assad is bad and wrong and the rebels are good and pure and right. And there were many on the left who went with that line and that argument. And I thought that was far too reductive and it missed a hell of a lot of the nuance of the situation. But he was one of the toughest on the left against Bashar Assad. And yet this guy's bringing up Assad. Like, where were you when Assad was? Well, he was yelling at Assad when you were criticizing Assad.
Attack against Israel was reprehensible. But for God's sake, how long are you going to occupy these people? For me, the idea of Israelis and Palestinians or Muslims or Jews being different is absurd. Those are just stupid labels that we put on people. They're all human beings. I value the Israeli life just as much as I value the Palestinian life. We're all human. Stop using these nonsense labels
let me ask
to
you a
kill
question.
each other.
Cenk,
all this guy wants to do is more murder of Palestinians.
Cenk, let me ask
when
you.
are you going to let them go?
Cenk, let me ask you a question. You mentioned genocide there. What Hamas is actually in its charter dedicated to doing is the purest personification of genocide. Well, it is. They want to see the eradication of Israel, and they proved on October the 7th they will kill as many Jews as they can possibly get their hands on. So that is pure genocide. What Israel is doing in return, I don't think meets the category of genocide. Because they don't want to get rid.
Okay. All right. Look. Let's just look at the facts. Let's just look at the numbers. Okay, this is very straightforward. Originally, we were told 1,400 Israelis were killed. Turns out later on that was revised down, according to some sources, to 1,200. Okay. When you look at the numbers, Israel released the names of the people who were killed. About 55% of those killed were military targets. 45% were civilians, roughly. And when you look at, they released the names and there was somebody put a highlighter on all the military people and everybody else was not in highlighter. And you could see about 55% were military, about 45% were innocent civilians. Those 45% innocent civilians, that is absolutely, it's a war crime. You're killing innocent people. You should never target innocent people ever, full stop. Babies, women, children, men who aren't, in the military. It's wrong in every conceivable and imaginable way. And I am of the belief that Hamas killed many of them on purpose, if not all of the civilians on purpose, okay? On the Israeli side, the number of civilians killed I actually have the numbers right here. I'm going to pull it up just so I can be super specific. There's 12,910 civilians killed, confirmed as of me talking to you right now. 14,160 killed in total. So according to the UN, it's a 74% civilian kill rate that Israel is doing to the Palestinians. According to Euromed Monitor, it's above 90%. Civilian deaths. So we're between 74% and let's say 94% kill rate on the Israeli side. That's also purposeful. That's on purpose. They're not being super specific. We have Israeli officials saying we're not trying to be specific, we're trying to do damage. So if the intent is for Hamas and for the IDF to kill civilians on purpose, then it absolutely is fair to call both of them genocidal. And Piers likes to paper over this by making an argument we've all heard a million times. That when Hamas kills civilians, it's on purpose. When Israel does it, it's collateral damage. I simply don't buy that. And I think the mountain of evidence agrees with my take on it. Again, when you have 5,830 children killed, 3,211 women, when you've displaced over 1.6 million people, when you've bombed 115 health facilities, including 21 hospitals, when you've killed 47 journalists, when you've damaged 66 mosques and bombed 3 churches, it's on purpose. It's on purpose. And even if you buy the argument of, hey, they're using human shields, well, you don't kill 20 civilians to get 3 Hamas members. And in any other context, everybody agrees to that. But with Israel, everybody shuts their brains off and goes, well, I mean, what were they going to do? Not that is what they should have done, unless they wanted to do that. It was their intent to do that, and it is their intent to do that. So this, on this one, Piers just totally, he always misses on this. He doesn't get it. There is, like, Sam Harris likes to make the argument, the sin of moral equivalence. There is no equivalence between Hamas and the IDF. That is 100% incorrect. There absolutely is an equivalence.
Every Palestinian. They don't want to kill every Palestinian.
No.
They want to kill every Hamas terrorist. Now, there are legitimate question marks about how they're going about this and about the civilian casualties. But there is a moral distinction between what Hamas is dedicated to doing and what Israel is dedicated to doing, isn't there?
Let's be clear. If it was true that Israel was just trying to get Hamas and Hamas isn't, and they're trying to get civilians, then that would be true. But again, that's not true. It's just not true based on the numbers and based on the expressed intent of many top Israeli officials.
No. First of all, Hamas is a bunch of idiots. They should take that stuff out of their charter. All it does is hurt the Palestinian cause.
I agree.
There's no call for it. It's dumb and it's immoral. But Hamas claims that they would like to do these things, and from time to time they do these attacks that are horrible and they should never do. But Israel actually kills Palestinians, actually occupies Palestine, actually denies the Palestinians a state. So there's this absurd talk of like, oh, if Hamas was super powerful, they might deny Israel its existence. Except Israel does exist. And the Palestinian state does not exist because Israel is blocking their state. So stop using, I'm not saying it to you, Piers, but this propaganda, hold on.
You know, Cenk, you and I are almost the same age, and I'm actually quite worried for how upset you get on TV. You got to protect your health. You're just kind of losing it. Now, calm down.
Why would you, like, I don't know why he would embrace being this smug and dishonest and saying things like that. Like, that doesn't look good. You think that makes you look good, Rabbi Shmuley? Jesus Christ.
I'm upset that you keep advocating for the murder of civilians.
Cenk, you have to stop yelling. You have to stop screaming. And you need to know the facts. The Palestinians were offered a state 7 times, and they rejected it 7 times. Bill Clinton...
We already went over all this. He's not bringing up the hundreds of peace proposals that went through the UN that Israel blocked. He's not acknowledging that at all. And by the way, he wouldn't want to talk about the specifics of those peace agreements because even in the most kind to the Palestinians peace agreements, they still didn't have control of their own airspace and had to be demilitarized. So they're not really a sovereign state by any stretch of the imagination. It's more like a Bantustan from South Africa. And so he's not, it's so dishonest. He's so dishonest.
Told Yasser Arafat in 2000, you have made me a failure as president because Israel was giving you 97% of Judea and Samaria and the old city of Jerusalem. And Ehud Barak even offered the Temple Mount, the holiest site in Judaism, and the Palestinians rejected it. You simply don't.
Go watch the PBS Frontline documentary to get all the details on this, and you'll see it is much more complicated than what he's making it out to be. Oh, Palestine got all what they wanted, and Israel gave away so much, and they still said no, because they're crazy savages who are bloodthirsty.
History. Read a book. In fact, read a Wikipedia article before
Read a book! I can't stand this guy.
On TV. Number 2, you made a very good point before, Piers, that Winston Churchill is the greatest British statesman and hero of the 20th century. Let's remember, when Churchill was faced with a genocidal threat of the Nazis, you know what he did, which Israel would never consider doing? He laid waste to 70% of Dresden, Essen, Cologne, Berlin. He eviscerated Germany and turned it into a parking lot, murdering about 6 million German civilians. Israel has never even considered doing 1,000th of that. And FDR acquiesced to it, and he's considered our greatest president of the 20th century. And then Harry Truman dropped 2 atomic bombs on Nagasaki, Hiroshima. So and Israel has nuclear weapons, has never considered doing that. Israel opened up.
Well, they've actually. Okay, let me come at you, Rabbi.
I want
to come back to you on 2 points.
Simple question, Cenk.
I want to ask you a question, Rabbi.
Call Winston Churchill a war criminal on this show today. Will you call Churchill a war criminal?
All right, Cenk, answer that question.
Okay, so Rabbi Shmuley, if you're actually a rabbi, what the standards of history have changed. So the Mongols went into Baghdad and killed every man, woman, and child, killed 800,000 people, the largest city in the world. Now, we don't live by those standards anymore. And right now, if a modern British prime minister or American president advocated for dropping a nuclear bomb in Japan or killing 70% of the people that live in Dresden, you're damn right I'd call him a war criminal. It's a different situation today than it was in the past. And so what you're saying is, hey, we only murdered 10,000 civilians and wantonly and recklessly, and we only did a partial genocide, so we're not as guilty. No, I'm not buying it at all.
So I actually think that's a good response from Cenk. His argument is like, look, the morality has evolved. The morality has changed, and we're more reasonable and humanitarian these days. And of course you wouldn't kill 6 million innocent civilians and act like you're a good guy in that scenario. So I think that's a very good answer. Another point that could be made, if that one doesn't get through, which of course none of these are going to get through to him, but for somebody who might think Rabbi Shmuley's argument there is reasonable, another point is, when the war is literally existential in nature, yes, in that scenario, you're going to have reactions that are more like that, right? But the point is, and he would disagree with this, but I think he's wrong, that it's actually not existential for Israel. They might say it is, but it's really not, because it's not like two relatively equal powers going after each other here. Gaza is effectively an open-air prison, and Israel has the backing of the world's most powerful country and military in human history. So it's not existential, which adds that extra layer of like, this is really gratuitous and asinine and over the top, right? So you can make the existential point that World War II is existential. This is not existential, but I actually think his argument is even better, that the morality has evolved. And of course, using the correct standards of the day with international law, right? Using international law and actually applying it and caring about it, yeah, you're damn right. Anybody who does that would be a war criminal, regardless of what they say their, quote, intentions are in the process.
Really, I want to ask you a question. Okay, hang on, Rabbi, I want to ask you a question, which is the unique scenario in Gaza is that nearly half of the civilian population are children. They have nothing to do with this. They're not politicians. They're not in Hamas. They're not terrorists. They're not military. They're kids. And they are in their thousands being killed here. And I ask you, really, is there any limit, you as a rabbi, of the number of children who need to be killed to get rid of Hamas here, or is there no limit?
Of course there's a limit. We mourn the death of every Arab, Muslim, Palestinian child as if a Jewish child died. They are absolutely equal before God. That's why Israel withdrew completely and utterly in 2005, something that Cenk will not even...
That's a lie.
Acknowledge. There isn't one Israeli soldier, there wasn't until this new invasion, because of the attack on Sderot, I went to those places, Pierce. I was there 2 weeks ago. I saw the blood caked on the walls, congealed to 3 or 4 inches. I saw the knives that were used to murder entire families. We saw the place where Thai, not Jewish, Thai farm workers who were growing pumpkins were beheaded. We saw the body of Shani Luke, and I spoke to her mother, Ricarda, who was taken naked. These are religious men in Hamas, taken naked in her underwear and her bra, her dead body, these necrophilia savages. We saw all that. How many Palestinian children need to die? God forbid, not one. All Hamas needs to do is let the civilian population go south. Stop using them as human shields.
Oh, that's amazing. So in other words, she's like, just if they were to just peacefully accept the ethnic cleansing where they lose their homes, everything would be fine. That's incredible. So they, of course, the northern half of Gaza, they're like, well, this is ours now. You guys all got to go south. And they're marching them south. Some Israeli officials are calling it the Gaza Nakba. And he's like, if you do that, everything's fine. Just accept the ethnic cleansing and everything's fine. Oh, my God. And all the stuff he's saying about the horrors and the brutality of Hamas, it's all true. But at the same time, you could say the same thing about the Israeli airstrikes that are killing thousands and thousands of children. And he would never talk in those specific terms with the gory details for that side of the equation.
These Palestinian children to die. Every Palestinian child to Hamas is a bulletproof vest.
Okay, but you said
they exist for no other reason than to humiliate Israel.
Okay.
Let them go south and be safe.
Okay.
But Hamas wants them.
They're also bombing the south. If they just go south, they'll be safe. Israel's bombing the south too.
It's Hamas's fault. It's Hamas's fault. It's Hamas's fault.
Rabbi Shmuley, you did say
that very, very brilliant and intellectual. Thank you very much. Shocker. A defender of the Israeli government says literally everything is Hamas's fault. They have no agency.
There's a limit. What is that limit?
Pierce, it's hard to put a number on how many people Hamas is prepared to allow to die in order to destroy the state of Israel. Remember, Hamas's motto is from the sea.
Literally not answering it, not answering it, not answering it.
From sea to sea, Israel will be, Palestine will be free. It's the annihilation of every Jew. Iran.
He said from sea to sea. This is from the river to the sea.
Word openly, a second Holocaust. This is the eve of Kristallnacht. I don't want to put a number on how many Palestinian children. I want a ceasefire right now. Hamas must surrender unconditionally, just like FDR and just like Churchill demanded of the Nazis, unconditional surrender, release the hostages. We get a ceasefire right now. Cenk, let me ask you to call for a ceasefire by having Hamas, who you think actually...
You've created way more Hamas by doing this indiscriminate bombing campaign. And he knows this is an impossible standard to get all of Hamas to give up to stop the bombing. So he knows it allows for perpetual bombing. This is all so dishonest.
Cares about the Palestinian population, to announce their surrender. Call for their surrender right now. They launched this attack unprovoked against Israel. They slaughtered 1,400 people. They are holding little babies whose diapers need to be changed as hostages. Call for them to surrender unconditionally.
All right, Cenk, final word to you.
Can we...
Okay. So, look, all this is nonsense. First of all, Israel did not withdraw. They control the borders of Gaza 100%. And as you can tell now, they cut off the water and power anytime they want. The Jewish people have been oppressed throughout history. My heart goes out to the Jewish people for all the pain and the suffering that they have endured through all of these years. But now Israel, unfortunately, is not the oppressed. It is the oppressor. Look at them dropping 7,000 bombs on grandmothers and children. There's an American nurse that explained on CNN yesterday about how she sees little kids with burns all across their bodies. So Hamas is terrible. Yes, I can call for their surrender. That's easy. I don't like Hamas. I think Hamas is Muslim fundamentalist. But it's an impossible standard, and you know they're not going to meet that standard. And because you want to keep killing those civilians to show them how mighty you are and what a great oppressor you are, I'm sick of it. And it's not only ruining the Palestinians and causing their deaths, but it is ruining. It is causing the moral decay of Israel.
Blood libel.
Oh, please shut the fuck up. So now he's accusing Cenk of being an anti-Semite again. All right, that's a good way to end this. I don't know how I would have reacted, how I would have handled it if I had to debate this guy, but it's just, all of it is so shamelessly dishonest. It's just so shamelessly dishonest. And I think Piers is trying to engage in it honestly, even though I have disagreements with him. Cenk, I think, is engaging honestly, even though he had that moment where I wouldn't have done it, where he just screamed a bigot and racist at the guy. But, man, I don't know. When you read the comments, people are like, this conversation wasn't worth it. It was just a scream fest. I disagree. Because, look, the reality is, take a hardcore Israeli supporter and a hardcore Palestinian supporter, and this is what the conversation is going to look like. And so I think you have to sort of have these conversations because they're illuminating. And they can get people closer to truth, despite all the falsehood Shmuley was spewing there. And it gives you an insight into what it's really like trying to ameliorate this conflict. So anyway, I think overall, Cenk did a good job there. And this Rabbi Shmuley guy is absolutely insufferable. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.